I said yes when my best friend asked me to pose as her boyfriend to her family. They had known me for years. From moment one, I knew it was a mistake. I also knew that I wasn't sure if I could do it. But when she asked me, I wasn't able to tell her no. At least, not yet. That happened later. My name is Grant Hayes, and my best friend's name is Laura Dent. I'm 27 and she's 25. We met in college. I was a senior, she a sophomore. When I graduated with a degree in business management, I took a job at a local publishing company, Sunrise Books, and the owner immediately suggested I get an MBA, so I turned around and took night classes at the same college, where Laura was still an undergrad. I had thought maybe we would drift apart once I graduated, but when I immediately enrolled in graduate school classes, we were right back studying in the library. I knew I was in love with her the moment she came right back and began studying with me like nothing changed. Before I continue, I want to tell you about the YouTube channel that's telling my story. We Are the Music Makers. They thought how I dealt with this situation was just what they should be telling their viewers. They write stories about life and love, and more importantly, hope. If you like my story, give them a like and consider subscribing. They want to keep telling stories like this, and they need your support to keep doing it. When Laura graduated with her own degree in English and a minor in education, I secretly printed up all her writing, put it in a neat binder, and offered it to the submissions department. 3 days later, she got a call from my company with an offer as a proofreader and consideration of publishing her short stories. When she confronted me, I admitted to submitting her work. I didn't know they'd offer her a position. She asked why I did that. I almost told her. I almost said that I loved her, and I wanted to be the one who opened up the world of professional writing to her, but I deflected. I told her that her writing fit the company's goals. She would have done the same for me. She stared at me for a minute, and I felt like the moment was going to crack. But she accepted my explanation, took the job at Sunrise Books too. And within 6 months, her first short story was published as part of a collection. Soon after, she suggested that we rent a house together. There was a 3-bed house not far from the university, and since she was no longer on campus, she thought it would make sense if I studied at a table in a shared house where she could be close rather than alone at the library. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We lived in that house for 3 months, and all seemed well. One night, she watched me as I finished studying for the night. I stretched, and she pulled out a Diet Coke for me and a White Claw for herself. So I could use a favor, Grant. She was using the voice I knew meant she was asking for something she wasn't sure she ought to be asking. Fool that I was, and probably still am. I put my textbooks in my bag, opened the Diet Coke, and turned my attention to her. What do you need, Laura? I could feel her digesting my attention, weighing the reasonableness of her request, then took a deep breath. Well, Grant, when I told my mother that we had started renting the house, she told me that rooming with a man would stunt my chance at relationships with other men. I knew that she and my own grandmother were serious about me dating, and feeling her disapproval, I blurted out, "It's not like that, Mom. Grant and I are getting serious." I felt my heart sink to my stomach. She had just told her mother that we were an item. For 2 years, what I had been silently wishing for was something she was casually pretending at. I think she must have read something on my face. It's only for my family. One performance per month. I knew better. She had a close family. She chatted with her mother almost daily. She was texting with her sisters all the time. She was talking with her grandmother every week, and she or her family, or both, found excuses to hang out together. Just last week, she had been out to brunch with her sister and had shown up at the hospital when her grandmother went in for a routine checkup. I didn't begrudge her this closeness with her family, but I knew them. They'd want her boyfriend around. I'd have to perform on FaceTime calls, and I wasn't sure I could, but I just nodded and said in a tiny voice, "Okay." She looked at me, really looked at me. I loved her for that. She read the room, or at least tried. "Are you sure?" I offered a nod. I didn't have the words to say yes to her a second time. She leaned in for a friendly hug. She got too close. I could feel her shoulders lean into me, her hands squeezing my shoulders, and I resisted a shudder until she let go. She started going over all the things we had to do, hand-holding as we entered and left. Sitting close on the couch. One kiss in a side room, or if we were alone in the kitchen. It would be a performance, but it needed to look incidental, private. I was gripping the legs of the table. I was sure my knuckles were turning white. After 10 minutes of discussion, she looked at me. "Grant, are you sure you're feeling all right? Your face is turning pale." I tried to act casual. "Maybe there's a little bug going around the campus." She put her hand to my forehead. "No fever. If anything, you might be a little cool to the touch. I have some chicken I can make into a soup." She started by making tea, putting a little honey in it. "You don't drink tea black like coffee. You enjoy it sip by sip, and this will make it enjoyable." I liked her care. I liked it too much. It gave me the dangerous impression that she felt something for me. But we were fake dating, and that was eating me up from the inside. Soon she was frying chicken and chopping vegetables. "I'm not going to let my fake boyfriend suffer, you know." She turned back and gave me the kind of smile that indicated trouble. I smiled meekly in return, but I was genuinely feeling shaky. I didn't like it, and I did my best to fake being okay. The next day, instead of coming directly home, I wandered over to Ginger's, a local dive bar and watering hole. It was a place where I could have a drink or two and kind of reset. I was one beer in when this redhead walked in, looked around, and made a beeline for me. She pulled up her stool and she started chatting. Her boyfriend had left her a few weeks ago, and she was looking for a good-looking guy to talk to. Like an idiot, I bought her a beer. And she took that as a sign of interest. A few minutes later, she was laughing at everything I said, had her hand on my arm, talking about how lonely she had been. It would have been an easy score, maybe even a relationship. But then I looked at what that would mean. Actually dating a woman, and then faking things once or twice a week with Laura. Kissing for real, and then faking it with the woman I actually wanted. They couldn't meet, and if her family found out about it, the fireworks and rage would be visible from space. I chatted amiably, but then paid my tab and practically ran out the door. Those approaches were rare, and that girl was attractive, but I knew I was already drowning emotionally. That girl deserved a man who wasn't tied up in something like this. When I got home, Laura suggested we try the physical contact she thought would convince her family. We started by sitting close on the couch. "Hand over my shoulder," she said. I did so, and I had done something similar before. Her shoulders dropped. I felt them. It was like a solid inch when my hand rested. Her eyes turned to me. There was an expression I couldn't quite read. But for me, this was both very pleasant but also frustrating. It was just what I wanted, but it wasn't real. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied. She then reached her hand over to mine. For a minute, her hand was just touching, but then she took it and gently pulled it until they rested on her knee. I had to grit my teeth in order to not shudder at the moment. For another minute, our hands were entwined, and it was both the best and the worst feeling in my life. I never thought she could be comfortable sitting as closely and as intimately as this. Then I felt her turn herself towards me. "All right, kiss time. There's no avoiding it." Grant turned towards me. I let go of her hand and obeyed. "I know you've kissed girls before, so I'm sure you can do it." So here's the scene. We're in the kitchen, or maybe on the porch. You look back as if to check we're alone. Then you kiss me as if you're going as far as you dare in my parents' house. It might be that we'd be avoiding notice, but I want someone to catch us in the act. It's evidence, so kiss me like we're supposed to be alone. Never had I been so conflicted in all my life. Of course I wanted to kiss her. But I wanted it to be because we wanted each other. But I had to go through with it. I put my arms around her, pulled almost as close as I would have liked, and pressed my lips to her. As I kissed her, I thought that the best thing to do would be to make it affectionate, but stop before it turned into passion. But the thought presented itself. I wanted it. For one delightful traitorous second, my hands tightened, my lips pressed hers and began to part, and my tongue almost touched her. But I caught myself. I let my hands relax, and my lips returned to where I thought they should be. She broke the kiss, looked up at me, and whispered, "You almost got lost in the moment, didn't you? I thought the tiger might come loose." "Sorry," I whispered. She didn't say anything. She just rested her head on my chest and smiled a little. I thought I heard her say something into my shirt, but it was muffled. When I asked her what she said, she just shook her head. "Don't worry about it, but you have a convincing kiss. If Aunt Vicky wanders into the kitchen, she'll think we're desperately in love. I sighed involuntarily. She heard it, looked at me, gripped my shoulders and asked, "Is there something you need to tell me, Grant?" If we're best friends, we're not supposed to be holding secrets. I decided to toss a gamble out. "I'll tell you my secret if you tell me yours." She looked at me for a minute, then she slid her hands down to my chest. "Not yet, Grant, not yet." Then she pulled apart from me and disappeared into the kitchen. All that day I remained flustered and I could feel myself getting frustrated. I went to bed early just to try to figure out how I was going to make all this work. The next day, right after dinner, I was closing out my studies, and Laura wandered into the living room, sat down, and patted the couch. "All right, Grant. 2 more days. We have to get this down. Let's practice some more." I stayed at the table. "I really think we have it down, Laura. I don't think we really need to keep practicing fake romance." She raised herself up. "Practice makes perfect, you know that. If we try it a little every day, then when we kiss in my parents' house, no one will suspect." Against my better judgment, I slowly rose from the desk, somehow feeling unhappy, maybe even exploited, but I couldn't say no. When I reached the sofa, she held her hand out to me. "Sit." I sat and took her hand, and I wondered how I was supposed to visually communicate to everyone but her that this was what I really wanted. Her hand was warm and soft, and once again she entwined her fingers into my own. Then she pressed herself into me and draped my arm over as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I could feel my life force draining from me. We talked, and I'm sure she could hear the defensiveness in my voice. This was even harder today than it had been yesterday. Never had something been so pleasant and so deeply frustrating at the same time. Finally, she turned into me and she said, "Kiss me like you mean it, Grant. Kiss me like you've never wanted anything else in life." That seemed like an absolutely terrible idea, but how could I resist that demand? I turned towards her, leaned in, and pressed my lips to hers even firmer than yesterday. The effect was immediate and earth-shattering. A rush of emotion passed through me, and whether intended or not, Laura gripped the corner of my shirt. Then I heard a noise coming from her mouth. Nothing drastic, just "mmph." My brain registered it as a moan of pleasure, and my body just took over. I leaned into her, and my mouth began to take over. I even felt my tongue begin to press against her lips, and I could have sworn they were opening for me. But a flash of guilt burst across me, and I ripped my head back. "I'm sorry, Laura. I don't know what was happening. I wasn't trying to do that." She just looked at me, her hand still gripping my shirt at the shoulder. I looked down, and one leg was resting on my lap. We just sat there, looking at each other. "Do you want to practice some more?" she asked. I started to nod, but then shook my head. She then removed her leg and sat back. I looked out the window. "I need air. I need to go for a walk." I threw my shoes on and hurried out the door. Thankfully, the cool air of the evening helped me clear my mind. There were paths through the woods behind the neighborhood. I knew that one of them led to a little scenic view of the city. It was about a mile. As I walked, my mind swirled at how her words and actions weren't matching. I was trying to do what she wanted, practice kissing. But yesterday, when I almost lost control, it seemed like nothing. And then today, less than an hour ago, when I actually began taking things beyond standard kissing, she just wanted to keep going. "Do you want to practice some more?" Couldn't she tell that I was on the verge of things we couldn't take back? What if I had pushed her down onto the couch? She would have known that I really wanted her, and then what? As I approached the top of the Overlook Hill, I came to some conclusions just based on how I saw things. I had run out of willpower. If she cornered me, I'd probably reveal myself, just because this was getting too hard. I had the ability to hear her, but I don't think I could just kiss her like that anymore. Not in the house. I walked for probably 2 hours, and when I got back, Laura had food for me, just some macaroni and ground beef and some vegetables she had cooked, but I was grateful. I felt like I was beginning to run on fumes, and hot food helped a little. "You're not mad at me, are you, Grant?" I shook my head. I wasn't. I just knew that my feelings and desire for her meant that I had run out of the ability to fake it. When we were done eating, she came around, hugged me as I sat in my chair, and kissed the top of my head. We didn't talk much the rest of the night, but just before I was about to go to bed, she found me sitting on the couch, and she sat down very close, put her arms around my shoulders, and lay her head on my chest. I almost felt like something had changed, that maybe she had expected me to do something. If she had said something, anything, I know I would have, but she just leaned into me, and showing her I cared felt more important than anything else in that moment. After 10 minutes, she looked up at me, kissed my cheek, said goodnight, and went to bed. She was kind and low-key all through the next day. More than once she thanked me for my willingness to help her. In the evening, she even got pizza, and while we were at the dinner table, the conversation was light. She mentioned how everyone would be glad to see me, and how her mother talked about me joining the family. I smiled, but it was still uncomfortable. When we were done eating, she began clearing the plates. She then asked me to take the pizza box out to the trash can and the bottles to the recycling. I nodded, and I saw that she was wiping the table down. Just as I was about to go into the garage, though, I saw this weird little smile on her face. 2 minutes later, when I came in, the kitchen light was off, and I could tell there was only one small lamp on in the living room. My hands began to tremble, and I was sure that she was going to ask me to meet her on the couch again. I went into the living room, expecting to see her, but the room seemed empty. I was just beginning to relax when Laura appeared from behind a door. She stepped into me, wrapped her arms around my neck, pressed herself against me in a way that I could not imagine or describe, and whispered in a husky voice, "One more time, Grant. Kiss me. Kiss me in a way that should convince Aunt Vicky and everyone else." I felt her hand against my cheek, and her knees pressed against mine. There was a stiffness in her whole body, as if she was trying to communicate something she wasn't saying. Her eyes were wide, and there was something very different there. Not performance, real desire. She was even shaking a tiny bit. I couldn't pretend to see the act anymore. Almost as an impulse, I wrapped my arms around her waist and kissed her. Not light, not sweet, but with a desire that I could no longer resist. It must have gone on for a minute, and I knew that how she looked at me when our lips parted would tell me if I had made the right choice. When our lips parted, her face carried a hint of surprise. "You really meant that, Grant?" I nodded, my voice nervous. "All I could see was that you didn't want a performance. You wanted me. If I misread you," my voice trailed off. "No," she responded. Her face turned pink, but she didn't pull back. "Do it again." This time, any hint of holding back was gone. I pulled her into me, and our lips crashed together in a way that had only occurred in my early morning dreams. She nipped at my face. I took hold of her shoulders. It was as if we were both two new people, and now that I could feel it, I didn't want it to end. When our lips finally parted a second time, she whispered, "How long since when I started grad school?" I responded. She let out a little gasp. "More than 2 years, you?" I whispered against her cheek. "Right before we moved in together. It's why I suggested it. I wanted to get closer." I considered it as I held her, but then I felt a wave of exhaustion press down on me like a heavy blanket. I let out a deep breath. Laura noticed. "Grant, you look pale. Are you okay?" I placed my hand over my eyes and forehead. So tired all of a sudden. She pressed a hand to my cheek. "You don't have a fever?" She guided me to the couch, and we sat down. I let out a sigh of deep relief just to be off my feet. "Have you been sleeping badly?" I shook my head. I was fretting a lot. I really was trying to keep it a performance. Laura's eyes widened. She put her hand to her mouth. "I've been wearing you out because you were trying so hard not to let your emotions show." She looked down. "When you nearly let go of your inhibitions last night, you used up so much of your emotional willpower getting yourself back." She sat next to me, her arms around my neck. "Oh, my poor Grant, you've been so brave, and if you only knew that I would have welcomed your advances last night." I smiled a little bit, even through the weariness. "No point in worrying about what could have been," I said softly. "You don't have to sit here with a man who is too worn out to be anything more than a mediocre scarecrow. If you think I'm going to walk away from you, when you were the bravest man in the world for me, you're out of your mind," Laura told me firmly. "I'm not going to let the man who loves me suffer by himself." "You must be thirsty." I nodded. "You keep checking on me, even if it's just exhaustion. What's going to happen if I get a flu bug or a stomach virus? If you're actually sick, it'll be the end of the world, Grant. I'm assuming that fire will be falling from the sky, cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria." I laughed, even if it came off as weak. She ran into the kitchen, and a minute later came back with a glass of iced tea. I sat up and began sipping it. "Thank you," I mumbled, reaching for her shoulder. It was then that she leaned into me. For several minutes, we were both silent. Then she said, quietly looking up at me, "Grant, do you think I was too hard on you?" I sipped my tea, thinking, "You were afraid." I was afraid, I guess. Maybe if you had at least shown approval, I'd have gotten it. Maybe even just pulling me in when I was moving in on you last night. She nodded quietly. A few more seconds, and I probably would have. I reached out to her hand. "Well, you gave me clarity tonight. Message received loud and clear, and I hope you could see the response." Loud and clear, she repeated with an ironic smile that I couldn't help but sputter through my tea. I brushed as much as I could from my shirt, took one long last sip, and then put the tea down. "So there is still a problem." "There is," she asked, her voice taking on a hint of worry. "I don't mind going to your parents, and I don't mind showing whoever will notice that we're actually in love, but I can't walk into a lie. This is a new relationship, not something that's gotten serious." She nodded. "Yeah, that was pretty stupid of me." She thought for a long time. "I'll have to call my mother in the morning and just live with the criticism." I reached for her back. "I don't see how I can cover for you on this one, but we will walk there together, and whatever anyone says, it'll be real." We took a very short walk afterwards under the streetlights. It was only about 2 blocks, but it helped clear our minds. Mine from trying to separate fact from fiction, hers from moving from the attraction process to being together. When we stepped back into the house, the quiet was one of the best things I had ever felt. The mixed emotions were gone, and all I could see was Laura. But I still had to deal with exhaustion. She came into my bedroom and sat on the bed next to me. The last thing I remember was her telling me how glad she was this new life was starting, and her hand stroking my hair. When I woke up the next morning, I slowly rubbed my eyes and was surprised when she was asleep next to me, in the bed. I startled, and that must have shifted the bed a little bit because she began to shift, then move a little bit, yawn, and then finally roll over. When she did, she was practically on top of me. Her eyes widened. When she said, "Hey," there was a hint of fear in it. "Care to explain?" I asked, casually, trying to evoke the tone of wanting an honest answer, not an apology. She stared at me. Her eyes looked up and down over me. Then she covered her face with a hand. I was just watching you. I wanted to stay close. You had been so worn out. I thought I should be there for you." I allowed a minute of silence. I was good at silence. Waiting to say things made it easier to think of something that would break the tension. "Well, if you're going to be in bed with me, you have to kiss me good morning." She stared at me for several seconds, then her mouth opened and then shut. She reached out, almost touched me, and then pulled back. "Kiss?" I put a hand on her waist. "If you're here in my bed, it must mean that you love me enough to stay the night. So we should have a good morning kiss." I felt her getting used to my hand on her waist. Then she put her hands on my face and kissed me. "Good morning, Grant." She paused and looked at me. "You're making this a lot easier than I imagined." I grinned. "Maybe this evening at your mother's will make up for it." She laughed out loud and kissed me again. Not long after we got up and started cooking breakfast together, the eggs got a little burned since we were kissing so much over the frying pan. The day passed easily. There was a lot of talk and kissing and learning each other's little habits. But in the afternoon, we had to stop and get ready. "Wear the red button down," she said. "Mom likes that one." I nodded. While I did so, I heard her talking on the phone with her mother. I only heard bits and pieces. "No, not months yesterday. Yes, telling the truth. Confirm it." I got the impression she wanted that conversation private, so I didn't ask when I came back out of the living. But she pulled me to the couch. "Mom's suspicious now. Admitting that I had lied only made her think that you're not with me at all." I thought for a bit. "If you need her to accept it, then I should take the lead." What, what, what do you mean, Grant?" "It means that I'll need to take the lead. You should be less assertive while we're there. I'll hold your hand. I'll pull you towards me. I'll take the lead in kissing. If your mother sees I'm the one in charge this time, then she'll have to conclude that this is real as of the last 24 hours. You can respond affectionately, but let me be the assertive one." She nodded, and that's what we did. When we got out of the car, I took her hand. When we sat on the couch, I put my hand around her arm. When we were in the garage, I pressed my lips to hers. When her Aunt Vicky found us kissing on the deck after dinner, deeply, she cleared her throat. "Just yesterday?" she asked. "We learn fast," I responded. She let out a sigh. "Just don't get yourself in trouble." When she was gone, Laura lay her head on my shoulder. "You did it, Grant. You convinced Aunt Vicky. It's not that hard when it's real." Then we laughed, kissed again, and went back into her mother's house.